Thank you all for tuning in. The following is a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people. Yes, it is I, your humble host, Bill Hatch III, coming to you live from the palatial home studios of Bald Spots Productions here in the beautiful city of Malden, Missouri. Joining me from more than acceptable safe social distances are my guests for today. We have Kimberly Cloud and Paul Joel. How are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Well, I always start with the same question, and that is, who are you reading? And since I'm not afraid to be sexist, we'll start with Kimberly. And ladies first. And so Kimberly, who are you reading?
Who am I reading? Can you define that a little bit, Mr. Hatch?
Well, what are you reading? Any books or great magazine articles or?
Yeah, don't laugh. I'm reading a book, and it's from the University of Phoenix. It's a statistic book, and that's basically it. I don't really. I engage in reading, but I don't have really that much time to. I will say this. I did read a book with a guy that sat up there. His name, I forgot his name, but he gave me a book to read about the stocks and market and stuff, and I read that, and it was like a month ago.
Okay. Yeah, I understand reading textbooks. I'm currently going after my Master's of Divinity, and so I'm reading a couple of textbooks myself. So
Cool.
yeah, I'm reading 50 core truths of the Christian faith, and a book on the church fathers.
Cool.
So not a lot of time for fun reading right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Paul, what about you? Who are you reading?
Well, I kind of make a living doing medical reviews in internal medicine, pulmonary,
Okay.
sleep medicine.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And the last thing that I want to do is start reading. Okay, I read the whole book. Okay? So I look at my book once in a while, the book that I wrote, to see if there's anything that can be changed or I got wrong. But really, I spend the whole day reading.
Oh.
Sure. Well, how about telling us a little bit about your book since we're on the subject?
Okay, well, I never believed in God because what happened to my parents during World War II. My mother was 4 or 5 years old. She was living in this huge house with her parents, a brother, several sisters. Each of the sisters had 3 or 4 kids and their husbands. And the Nazis came in and they tied up everybody. And she could see what was going on and hear what's going on, but fortunately the Nazis didn't see her. And so first they slaughtered the children in front of everyone. Then they raped the women, her sisters, and they slit their throats. Then they killed the husbands, and finally they killed her parents. And she ran out of there and lived on the street eating garbage for a couple of weeks until a Ukrainian couple who had no children took her in, and she hid the fact that she was Jewish. And that's how she survived the war. My father was much older. He was married and had an infant son and a wife. And again, he experienced many times being beaten up by the Polish people when he was growing up because he was Jewish. And so here he is, he's in the Polish army. And and Poland was overrun in a month or so. So he comes home one day and he finds out that his wife and his infant son were murdered by the Nazis already. So he ran and he took off this is a picture that he kept of himself in a Polish army uniform, okay? And he ran towards Russia. And he had this great immune system, or else he wouldn't have survived, which I inherited, okay? So you try sleeping 3 or 4 winters in the Russian winter there with no shelter, out sleep in the snow, sleep in the rain, whatever the heck it is, always going from place to place, stealing food, buying food. And he kept this picture so that people wouldn't think he was a Nazi spy. And towards the end of the war, the Russians came through and they saw him and they put him in the Russian army. And after about a week or so, he deserted from the Russian army too. So I don't know what the record is for most armies deserted in the same war, but he deserted from 2 armies in the same war, okay? And so he met my My mother afterwards, and of course he was much older than she was, and she could have come on a boat to the United States. She was a minor, okay, at the end of the war. She's only 15 years older than me. And she just died last year. And so she married him, and I didn't even know if she ever really loved him or knew what love was all about. And so they came to the United States, and I had his immune system, so it appeared like I never got sick. And I never had a pediatrician. So I never had like these immunizations you're supposed to get from the first 3 years, MMR, DPT, tetanus, whatever. And so I'm 3 years old, and I'm not saying any words. And a friend of my mother said, "Hey, this is not normal. The kid's supposed to be able to talk when they're one. At the age of one, you're supposed to be able to say two words of meaning, usually some form of mama, dad, dad, but I know who's who." So I'm three, I'm not saying anything. And I had this great memory. So I remember this is 72 years ago. I'm 75 now. So I was seen by a female pediatrician who sent me to a male pediatric neurologist. And I remember the worried look on my parents' face, is he retarded, whatever it is. And at the end of the examination, the pediatric neurologist said this. This is a direct quote from 72 years ago. "No, he's not retarded. He's aware of his environment. He'll learn to talk. He's just slow. He's very slow. Basically, he's dumb as a box of rocks, but he's not retarded." And I didn't know what environment meant, but I knew it was a good thing I was aware of it. Okay. What he failed to ask is anyone speaking English to this kid? We didn't have a TV or a radio in the house, and my parents were speaking Polish or Ukrainian or Russian to each other or Yiddish. Nobody's speaking English to me. So how the heck am I supposed to learn English? But he didn't ask that, so I was labeled as dumb. And then to top it all off, because they had multiple jobs and there was no daycare then, starting in first grade, I was put in this thing called yeshiva, which is for Jewish boys. They have it for Jewish girls now. You get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and in the morning you learn how to read Hebrew, write Hebrew, history of the Jewish people, the Old Testament. There's a break for lunch, then somebody else comes in and teaches you what you learned in public school, reading, writing, arithmetic, whatever. And so the day is from 8 to 5, and I'm the dumbest kid in every subject. Okay, then we moved to a different part of Brooklyn, different yeshiva, same thing. I'm the dumbest kid in every subject. It's third grade now. And so Mr. Tandler, who was the person in third grade who taught the public school subject, said, "I need to talk to you after class." And I was worried because I knew I wasn't getting an award for being dumb. He said, "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but when I call on you in class, you seem to have some idea what's happening. You take these tests. You're the worst student I ever had in my entire teaching career. Don't you study for the tests?" So I told him the story when I was 3. I don't get home till I'm 6. There's nobody there. I got to grab some food, do the Hebrew homework, wash up. I barely have enough time to get ready for the next day. Why should I waste my time studying? So about 2 weeks later, he announces there's a test and embarrasses the hell out of me. He looks at me and says, "And you understand English, or is English a second language for you? I don't want to hear about your schedule. It's a test tomorrow. Study for the test." So I studied for the test and got an A. Who the hell knew it? That changed my life. Okay, and then I was getting A's and everything. And I get this. Everybody, all the teachers in these yeshivas had dark hair like I had. And when I got the answer wrong, I get smacked on the wrist with a ruler. So I got little scars on the tops of my fingers and my hands from getting beaten. And I heard about, now that I was getting A's, I heard about this thing called SP, Special Progress. You take a test in 6th grade in public school. If you do really well, you go from 7th grade to 9th grade, skip 8th grade. And for me, having one less year of school is like winning the lottery, or possibly be better. Plus, in public school, they don't hit you, and it's only from 9 to 3, so it's already a win. So I talked my way into public school, and I'm there in 5th grade after getting A's in the yeshiva in 4th grade. And I have another teacher with dark hair. I'll leave her name out of this, okay? And she wasn't hitting me, though. She was embarrassing me. She hated all the boys and loved the girls. So I get the answer wrong, and she'd say, quote, "Listen, you have to stop thinking with your penis and start using your brain for a change." And I'm like mortified, embarrassed. This is my female teacher. I'm 10 years old, talking about my penis in class. So finally, I get into 6th grade, and I have Miss Hammer, who's blonde. And for the first time, nobody's hitting me, nobody's embarrassing me, and school is normal. I take the test for SP and make it. I skip 8th grade. And I think in the back of my mind, I'm already impressed that blonde is wholesome, blonde is good. Okay, these other people with dark hair are animals. Okay, so fast forward, I'm now smart. Okay, I have this terrific memory, whatever the heck it is. Okay, and I'm now I do an internship in residency at Kings County Hospital, and the most brilliant person I ever met was this Dr. Howard Lyons, in charge of pulmonary there. And he had a couple of rules. The first rule was, if you know the patient, you don't need a chart. There's a hierarchy in medicine. The lowest is the intern and the resident and the fellow and the attendant. So I'd have 3 or 4 admissions at night, be up all night. And the next morning at morning report, he would take the charts and I would present. And he did that for all the interns. And I was the only one who could actually do it. The other interns would cheat and say, the labs are normal except for this and this. But I gave them all the numbers. And I had this tremendous memory that I never appreciated. Okay? So because of his letter of reference, I got to do a pulmonary fellowship at Mass General Harvard. So it's July 1st, 1978, the first day on the wards. There are 8 patients on the pulmonary service throughout the hospital. I get there 2 hours beforehand thinking I'm supposed to memorize this. And this is not people who just were admitted last night. They were there for a week or so with big charts. So then I meet the attending, Dr. Hales. I walk over to the chart rack and hand him the chart. And he looks at me like I'm crazy, and I hate that look. Okay, he says, look, I don't know if you know what's going on here, but I'm the attending. You're supposed to be presenting the case to me, not the other way around. And then I told him what Dr. Lyon said. And I said, look, you can go through the chart while I present. It'll save you time. You can write notes when you're done. Okay, instead of coming back here and writing notes and always save you a lot of time. So we did that, and then I gave him a chart for the next one. He said, you know this one too? I said, yeah, I know all 8 of them. Here's the purpose of the story. We finally get to the ICU. And I had been there about 2 hours beforehand. There was a shift change. There was a different nurse when I was there examining the patient. And it's a complicated patient. The patient's on a ventilator. There's ventilator settings every hour, vital signs every hour that you have to memorize. The tubes coming out of everywhere. And Dr. Hales is on my right. I'm looking straight ahead. And he's got the chart. And as I'm presenting, I see the back of this nurse's head, who I'd never seen before. And it's blonde hair. And we're thinking, as I'm presenting, I'm multitasking. As I'm presenting, I'm thinking, okay, the width of her shoulders is wide. She's not fat. Okay. And then she turns around and I see her face and I stop. And say to myself, oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. On TV and in movies, on the street, anywhere. What is this doing here? Okay. And then I hear in my right ear Dr. Hale say, listen, you want to tell me how this patient got on the ventilator? We're pulmonary, that's what we're here for. Basically, a nice way of saying we're not here to look at women. Okay, and the next thought was pulmonary. Who gives a crap about pulmonary? Look at this woman. Well, I'm shy with women. I don't have a lot of experience with women at all. Okay, and the last thing I want to do is ask somebody out who's married or engaged and get shot down for nothing. And she's wearing gloves. There's a nurse in the ICU. And she's brilliant, and she's athletic. She's like the perfect human being. Okay, she's getting an advanced degree at MIT at the same time she's working full time as a nurse. Okay, she's brilliant, and she could have been like a professional skier. She's athletic. She's brilliant. She's an incredible personality that lights up the room when you walk in there. Okay, and so I want to make sure that she's not married or engaged. So I stalk her for a couple of weeks. She lived about three blocks from the hospital. I lived about 5 blocks from the hospital. And I made sure to run into her as she was leaving around 5 or 6, or she's coming into work around 7 or 8. And this went on for a couple of weeks till I was positive she wasn't engaged or married. And I finally asked her out and said, would you like to have dinner, at this restaurant tonight? And so we're sitting at this nice restaurant in Boston and having dinner. And in walks Dr. Matt Miller, who was an young attending, like 4 or 5 years older than me, in the same pulmonary department, okay, who fancied himself as a ladies' man. And the next day he comes over and he says, how did you get her to go out with you? And I said, well, I didn't kidnap her, the usual way. I asked her if she'd like to have dinner, and she said, yes, that's how it usually works, And then he tells me, well, I've been asking her out for weeks now. She keeps turning me down. She's engaged to this cardiology fellow who we both knew, okay? You just see the huge rock on her hand. It's like about $50,000. And I looked, and I had perfect vision then, okay? So I didn't believe in God, but clearly he was there helping me, okay? And so, she's this very religious Catholic, okay, who graduated from Catholic High. Why is she going out with me when she's engaged to this other guy? Where is that rule in your book on the gospel, okay? And so it didn't make any sense. So I was very happy that she wanted to wait till we were married to have sex, because I had no experience with that, and I figured I'd screw that up too. Okay, and so finally, it's now 1981, and I asked her to marry me. Okay, and she said, "Well, I'll marry you, but only if you get baptized." And I said, "Well, how's that going to work? I don't believe in God." And she says, "Well, we baptize infants. Nobody's going to ask anything." So I remember thinking, okay. Somebody pours water on my head and I get to marry the woman of my dreams. It's a deal of the century. So I got baptized November 4th, 1981, and married in January 1982. But there really wasn't time to have this big honeymoon. So we planned this 6-week trip to Western Europe on a Ural pass in October 1982. And that's where the book starts. In the book, she's not there in the beginning, but clearly she's there. I'm not going on a vacation for 6 weeks without my wife, okay? So get this, we're in Germany of all places. And again, I hated Germany.
Paul, let's hold that for a minute.
Okay.
And let Kimberly have a chance to tell us about her podcasts
Okay.
and her UFOs. And because I saw that on the on your intake form and thought that was pretty interesting. So first, tell us about your podcast, Kimberly. What's the podcast called?
It's called the Kimberly Cloud Show, and it was developed December 7th, 2021. Okay. So basically, I talk to people about their past, present, and future. I try to highlight different snippets of what they want to highlight. And I try to talk to them in under 30 minutes. Then I have KCAA. I deal with talking to KCAA about their affiliates of NBC. And that's an hour-long show. And so I put people on NBC on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. And what happens is I begin to probe them. I probe them about, well, how is your past? Like, what did you do? What were you thinking at this time? How did you find out? How does this success lead into the next success? And I love my job. It led me into actually running for state senate, but I'm gonna talk about the UFO thing. Yeah, so pretty much I've seen UFOs 3-4 times, and it was pretty wonderful because I went on this one website. It's only one website in the entire United States that talk about it, and it talks about, well, what were you feeling when you seen it? And I was feeling love. I was feeling love, and I was feeling happy. It was a beautiful spacecraft, and I decided that I wanted to run for U.S. Senate in Santa Maria, and I sat up there and I ran for U.S. Senate. I got like 12 votes, but at least I ran. Don't laugh. At least I ran. And those were organic votes. Those were me actually going up to people, telling them my goals. Those were the 12 people I went up to. So imagine that was one day worth. And then I sat up there and I said, well, years went by and I said, well, I want to run for state senate again. And so I did it here and I'm doing it now. And, but I have to step back. Next year, I'm going to take a year off and then rerun with a lot of people behind my back. Now, I don't know whether next year I want to run for city council or state senate. It takes a lot of tries. It's not easy. You have to make cold calls to people. You have to fundraise. You have to do a lot of things. And then it depends on what environment or district you are in. So I had a hard district, and I'm stepping back, but I'm going to make a commercial. I'm going to have somebody to make a commercial for me so that I can tell the people, about the Kimberly Cloud Show, why I'm stepping down, what my plans are. And I care. I don't seemingly get a lot of people that watch me, but I will say this. When I see that ticker turn 1 or 2, I know that someone's out there watching me. And I feel like right now, the best opportunity is for me to tell them, well, hey, look, I have the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm stepping down for state senate. I know that with me stepping down, it'll break a lot. Like, for instance, yesterday, before I finished the sentence yesterday, someone called me about the voting stations. They said they don't like the mail ballots. They like the in-person voting. And I do too. So the voter asked me, what do you like? And I said, well, I like the in-person voting versus the paper ballots because that can get manipulated. And he's like, thank you and good luck, and I'm going to vote for you. So, yeah, I have some voters looking at my paperwork, and
It's too bad I'm not in your state. I'd vote for you. Okay.
thank you.
And
The
by
reason,
the way, the other thing that you have to do when you're making a pitch, you have to explain to them what you can do for them, like what you
yeah,
just did with the paper ballots. Okay, it's not just it's important not just to say this is my credential. I was on this show. I was doing this. I did this. I did that. Whatever that is. You also the next sentence has to be this is what I can do for you. Okay, this is what you get out of it if you vote for me.
People don't
yeah.
care. People don't care so much what you've done; it's what you're gonna do. They want to know about what you're gonna do for them.
Right.
And then I'm also going for my master's in business administration. Then I'm going back for my doctorates. So I want to stay in school for as long as I can so that when the time is right, I can be voted into either state senator or city council, either or. Like, I wanted to do this year to get my feet wet and to learn about what it takes to actually become one, a state senator, because the governor did the exact same thing, except he did it differently. He raised over $7 million, and then he ended up state governor. He ended up governor. So I appreciate you guys' input. Um, I I'll turn the tables. Well, I'll turn it back to Bill and then Paul.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, people want to know what's in it for them. It's unfortunate, but we live in a world full of selfish people. They all want to know what's going on there. But no, that's great. I mean, it's 12 more votes than I got. Uh,
Did you run for
I,
it?
no, I've thought about running for office, but there's just too much work.
Yeah.
You know. But
Hey,
yeah, that's a difficult thing to do.
agree. There is a lot of work done that is with that, but I'm willing to take that risk because I feel like I'm a veteran also. I feel like if
Oh,
they
okay.
can have veterans in the VA that's disabled, they should be able to have disabled vets in the state senate, in the house, in Congress,
Right.
or wherever they may be, because they voted to have this, happen for veterans. So it should be no problem as long as they're doing their job.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well,
The other thing is when you struggle for things and you suffer for things, that's really where you really learn. Okay. There's actually a purpose for suffering in many ways, physically. And it reminds me of this very famous quote from Aeschylus, 500 BC. Okay. It starts off, even in our sleep, pain which does not forget falls drop by drop upon the heart until in our despair and against our will comes wisdom by the grace of God. That's how you really learn when you struggle. Okay. And I learned that when I got sick with this Hashimoto's encephalitis. Everything was turned upside down. The same way you said you saw UFOs. Well, here I am. I'm driving to work. I'm a physician. Okay, I'm driving to the office to see patients on March 25th, 2019. And suddenly I'm confused. I don't know how to drive. I don't use a cell phone. I stopped the car. Fortunately, a policeman came over and called my wife. And I recognized my wife, but about 90% of my memory was suddenly wiped out of my brain. Okay, and I had this severe peripheral neuropathy where my fingers didn't work, my feet were numb. And I was in the hospital from March 25th, 2019 to May 2nd on chemotherapy, steroids, and seizure medicines, just seizing. And I was a moron. Okay, and my two adult sons came to visit then. They lived in a different place. And I thought I didn't recognize him. They said, no, Dad, you recognize us. But every time we came, every day for the week or so, you thought it was the first time you saw us. Okay, you didn't remember yesterday that we came to see you, or the day before, or whatever it was. And so here I am. I'm like a complete moron, and I can't walk without a cane, and my feet are numb, my fingers don't work, and it's a mess. Okay, and so here I am. I'm discharged from the hospital on May 2nd, 2019, and it's an awful existence because I'm a burden to my wife, who loves me. Okay, uh, and at one point, and I'm no hero in this story. At one point, I called a priest that I knew on the phone and said, "Look, is it okay if I stop eating and drinking and let nature take its course? Because every day for me is horrible. I can't take a shower without worrying I'm going to kill myself in the shower, okay, or go down the flight of stairs." And a couple of months ago, I fell down the flight of stairs and broke my wrist in my head. So I know leave the house. I'm afraid to leave because I'll get lost or whatever. And this way, it would be a win-win for me and my wife. I'll be dead, and I want her to get a miserable day, and she can marry somebody else. I'm like a noose around her neck. And he said, "Go for it. God will understand." But then this Dr. Cheryl Fry, who takes care of me, who read the book, okay, that I wrote, "A Man Like You and Me, Supernatural Adventure Story." It's basically a true book. And in the book, I'm tasked, and in real life, I'm tasked with trying to get the Pope to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in unison with the bishops, as requested on October 13th, 1917, by Our Lady of Fatima. And that's my task. In the book, I'm supposed to do it to avert a nuclear holocaust. And in real life, I'm supposed to do it. So this Dr. Fry said, "Did you tell him about the book? Did you tell him what you're supposed to do?" And I said, "No, I didn't tell him about the book. We're talking about not eating and drinking." Okay? And then she convinced me to not kill myself. Okay? She said, "Look, what do you think would happen to Noah? God tells Noah to build the ark. And if Noah said to God, 'Look, I'm busy, get somebody else to do it,' how do you think it's going to work with him when he dies? Do you think he's going to go to heaven or hell?" And he said, "I don't care what this priest said. You're just certainly going to go to hell. God says you're supposed to get this consecration done. Give up." So that's the only reason I'm still alive. I'm no hero in this story, life story, or my book. Most people think of themselves as the hero of their life story, but the hero of my life story is my wife, Mary Beth. She's the beautiful blonde in the book. Okay, get this: we're married. Okay, and we're on a train in Munich, Germany, of all places. Okay, it's a crowded train. It's October 13th, 1982. And we're standing in the aisle. She's in front of me. And about 10, 15 feet in front of her is this crazy man with a knife. And the people are screaming at him in German. And suddenly he bolts down the aisle towards my wife. Now, a normal reaction would be, I'll jump out of the way. She sees this. She's athletic. She'll jump out of the way. She could have been a professional skier. She's like a perfect human being. Okay? But that's not what I did. I grabbed her by the shoulders and threw her on the lap of this guy. And then I put my weight on her, so there's no way she could stand up. There's no way this guy could get her. Okay? And and then the guy goes past me, and by the grace of God, he didn't stab me because I'm still in the aisle. He had to move out of the way not to stab me. Okay? And then he leaves in the next car, and the emergency is over, and I let her up, and there's not even a thank you. Okay, this is St. Mary Beth. Okay, if you carried her bags from the grocery store to the car, she'd say thank you. This, she doesn't even say thank you. And I pray to God every night and explain this to me. Okay, this makes no sense. And what I found out was it was just wiped out of her brain. Okay, the evil one came and just wiped it out of her memory. And I could never understand this until I got sick on March 25th, 2019, and suddenly all the stuff was wiped out of my memory. Okay, and that's what kind of happened to her. Okay, so I'm I understand the feeling of UFOs or the feeling of otherworldliness because I'm
Yeah.
and living in that. Okay, so anyway, this goes on, and it's 2 years now of chemotherapy and steroids and anti-seizure medicines. I get an annual MRI. The MRI is unchanged. The parts of my brain responsible for memory are still destroyed. Okay, so I stopped the medicine, and then a year later, on April 29th, 2022, miraculously, my memory comes back like this. Okay, off medicines for a year. So it's kind of like a miracle in a way. Okay. I can't explain it. I still have the peripheral neuropathy. It's still, again, a couple of months ago, I fell down a flight of stairs and broke my wrist, so it was bumpy. And there's always a match in my life. The crazy guy with the knife on the train. I was 6 years old, in yeshiva, looking for something in the basement for something, and I run into these two men and got molested. I was on one guy's lap, who's had his hands in my pants. The other guy had a knife to my left side of my throat there, saying, "Well, maybe the noise is going to kill me." So that guy I saw his face, and he's like in his 20s, and he had like thinning black hair like I have now, and I never forget that guy's face. But again, another thing with a knife, crazy guy with a knife. So there's always a match in my life with this stuff, and the only thing I can think of, there's no match to my wife except me. I'm the match to her. Okay, and at one point it was such a weird existence because I didn't know what I looked like. Like I forgot, I'm 75. I forgot what I looked like beforehand, and so my half sister sent me a picture of me as a young man, and I was good looking. Like who the hell knew? Anyway, that's kind of the story here.
That's a
Wow.
deep story. You talk about a lot. Your memory being wiped clean, and the knife on the train and everything. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, well,
Just to
again,
go.
I never realized I had this phenomenal memory until I got sick and lost it. Like you don't know what you have until it's taken away. Then you really know what it's like. And again, it reminds me a lot of this famous quote from Aeschylus, um, about suffering. Even in our sleep, pain which does not forget flows drop by drop upon the heart until, in our despair, against our will, comes wisdom by the grace of God. So I learned a lot. Okay, I'm glad the suffering, that part of my life, suffering is over. I got my memory back, but you really learn a lot that way. In that situation, that there's a purpose for suffering in life. Okay, and I saw a lot of suffering up front. It's not just my family, but I'm in medical school in New York City, and the third and fourth year I'm at Metropolitan Hospital. And then I did an internship and residency at Kings County Hospital in internal medicine, the largest hospital in the United States. And then I did my pulmonary fellowship at Mass General, where I met my wife.
Yeah. Well, it's I found that the struggle is what strengthens us. If there were no struggles, then we'd be weak, and we'd never get anywhere. Because
Well, that's true as long as you overcome the
yeah,
struggle. As long as you overcome the
right,
struggle. Okay.
right,
If you're consumed by the struggle and you die, that's the end.
yeah. Then
That's the end of
we
that.
got it.
I
Yeah,
feel like, if you struggle, I agree with you. I feel like if you struggle, it's a learning experience versus you going through, not through nothing. You don't go through anything, and you're not going to understand what stress is if you don't go through anything. And you can't learn how to challenge yourself out that stress if you don't know what you're going through. And I wanted to say, Paul, that you working as a doctor in New York, I'll say, in New York is very vigorous and very hard to do because you got a lot of doctors trying to be in New York City,
Right.
and it's hard. So I give it to you. Yeah, yeah.
Here's another story. Okay. So I was emaciated and I was starving as a kid and everything else. And then at the end of high school, I met these two other guys. We ran a football gambling session. So suddenly I had money so I could eat. Okay, and I spent the last 2 years of college lifting weights 6 days a week, upper body versus lower body, alternate, then one day off. So I went from 160 pounds, which is on my selective service card as 18, to 215 pounds. And I tried out for the Bridgeport Jets, so the farm team of the New York Jets at that time. This is 1970. The Jets had a great team. They won the Super Bowl the year before. And so they had like 120 men there try out, and like six of us were sent to training camp. And I'm in training camp, and I'm doing really well, okay? And I have this, in addition to being fairly smart, I had this idea to focus, to concentrate, like the whole world, And so the coaches come over to me and they're trying to get the secret, like, because they could see my face when I catch a short pass in the flat, and I'm going to get smacked by a linebacker who's 240 pounds, who's running full tilt, okay? And I wasn't intimidated, didn't drop the ball, and they could see my face. It was like nothing was happening, okay? So they were trying to get the secret to that, and I said, well, look, it's so important that I catch the ball. When that ball is in the air, There's nothing in this world except me and the ball. Okay, so that guy doesn't exist. Okay, I know 11 guys are on defense when the play lines up, but I'm not going to drop the ball where everybody on offense does their job and this play is no good because I dropped the ball. That can't happen. Okay, it's like my life depends on catching that ball. So the linebacker doesn't exist. Nobody on the team, nobody in the world exists. Just me and the ball. Okay, and then I learned how to catch the ball. If you ever watch a football game, uh, the quarterback turns around, hands the ball off to the running back, and if he drops the ball, it's a live ball. It's a fumble, which is worse than an incomplete pass. And when he looks straight ahead and he holds his hands like this, parallel, okay, and the quarterback puts it in there, and that's how I try to catch the ball if I could. Okay, it's already tucked in, so I already have it. It's tucked in, and then yeah, I get slammed. It hurts, but the play's over. Okay, so he can't possibly intimidate me. That was the focus of this. And then they said, well, I can't teach that to somebody else. I said, that's not my problem. I'm not here to tell you how to coach. I'm here to try to make this team. So anyway, so I'm doing well. I'm there for 3 weeks, and I hurt my knee. And it was subluxating. It wasn't dislocating, subluxating. I'd run down the field, plant, and cut, and I'd be on the floor untouched. So I got cut, and they said, look, get your knee fixed. You would have made this team. So I had already been accepted to medical school, and I started medical school that year. And then the next year, I had the knee surgery to try to fix this. So I figured I'm young. I can go try out the next year. Okay. And I wake up from the surgery, and I complain to the orthopedist that the cast is too tight. And he says, no, it's got to be snug. It's fine. And then about 10 hours later, in the middle of the night, an orthopedic resident comes over and wakes me up and saws open the cast. And my foot is paralyzed, and my foot is numb from where the cast cut into it. And that was the end of football. That was the end of being an orthopedic surgeon because you have to stand in the operating room. And it was horrible. Okay. And I was on crutches for all of my second year of medical school until I could finally walk. And you say it's a terrible situation, but it made me into a phenomenal physician. Okay. Because for the rest of my life, I'd have a 15-minute office visit with the patient. And the patient would have, let's say, maybe 3 legitimate complaints, but come in with 25 complaints. I would listen to all 25. I don't want to miss anything. Okay. And if it took a little extra time, I didn't care. And because of that, I've never had a malpractice case. I've never been sued. Okay. When you practice medicine for 30 years and never get sued, the numbers are this. You take the number of physicians in the United States that are practicing medicine that year, divide by 10, and that's the number of medical practice suits there are, medical malpractices there are in a year. So if you're doing this for 30 years, so again, sometimes something bad happens, but it has a good outcome. That made me a much better physician. Okay, at the time it was terrible, and it was awful because I was living at the YMCA, YMHA, the Y, 92nd Street Y, and there was a whole floor of medical students, podiatry students, dental students. So there was a communal bathroom and shower and everything else. I'm on my crutches, and I'm trying to take a shower, and suddenly the crutches slide out from beneath me, and I'm on the floor, and I'm saying to myself, this is an all-time low, okay? Like, I'm on the floor naked, and who the hell, how many people have been taking a shower walking on this, okay? And, what rash am I going to get from this nonsense, okay? But you suck it up, and you try to learn something from it. Okay, you try to get something out of it, okay, so that there's something positive out of this negative. Anyway, I'm very happy that my memory's back. Okay, and again, I was ready to stop eating and drinking and let nature take its course. I'm not the hero in this thing. Okay, again, as I said, I called this priest. This is before I had the memory come back. Okay, and I said, listen, is it okay if I just stop eating and drinking and let nature take its course? Because I can't stand another day of this with no memory. My hands don't work. My feet are numb. I can't stand whatever it is. And my wife could marry somebody else. We're Catholic. She can't marry anybody as long as I'm alive. It's a win-win for both of us. And he said, go for it. God will understand. You won't go to hell for that. But then this Dr. Cheryl Fry called me and said, did you tell him about the book? She's telling me you're supposed to get the Pope and the bishops to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. I said, no, I didn't tell him about the book. He said, well, she said, well, what do you think would happen to Noah? God tells Noah to build the ark, and he comes over to God and says, look, I'm busy, get somebody else. You think he's going to go well for him when he dies? And that's the only reason I'm alive. She saved my life. She read the book, understand what I thought, and that's the only reason I'm here. Now,
That's just incredible. Um,
And
yeah.
then thank God my memory came back, so I can tell you the story.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you think of all the little things that had to happen for us to be here right now. It's an amazing world to be sure. And yeah, God has a plan, and it will not be changed. So, but
And here's the other thing: the day that we're on this trip to to Germany and Europe in 1982.
mm-hmm.
Okay, we were married in January 1982, but there really wasn't time for a honeymoon. So we're on this trip,
Right.
and we're in Germany of all places. And we're on this bus to see Neuschwanstein, this beautiful castle that Ludwig II built in the 1800s. It's gorgeous. Okay, and the bus stops in the middle of nowhere at a coffee shop that obviously paid the bus company to stop. And my wife and everybody else gets off of there, except for me. I didn't feel like I had to eat or drink anything or use the restroom. And across the street is this little church. And I didn't know the story of it. But the story of it was there was a stick figure of Jesus being scourged that they used to use in the Good Friday procession, but everyone agreed it was ugly, so they tossed it in the barn for a couple of decades until somebody realized there were actual tears from the eyes of Jesus from this thing that were falling. So they built this church and put this ugly thing on the altar. And I walk in there not knowing the story. And it's a beautiful church. It's a Catholic church. There's stations of the cross on the walls. The walls and ceilings are gorgeous. But your eye is drawn to this ugly thing. And I'm sitting there looking at it. And then I get this message: I love you. Your sins are forgiven. And suddenly I was converted to believing in Jesus. So I'm all excited. I'm happy. I'm telling my wife this. And our plan was to sleep on a train to go to Vienna the next day. This way I don't have to pay for a hotel room that night. And we're checking out, and I say to my wife, look, let's celebrate. It's not every day something like this happens. Let's eat at a nice restaurant instead of eating some junk on the train. So I asked what's one of the nicest places to eat around here? And again, Munich is where the Nazi Party started. And my birthday is April 20th, which is the same day as Adolf Hitler. You can't make this stuff up. Okay? And so he says, well, probably the restaurant, the Four Seasons Hotel, is one of the nicest restaurants. I said to my wife, let's go there. He says, you can't get in there. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's a Friday night. Apparently October 15th, 1982 is a Friday. It's a small restaurant. You need a reservation. Plus, you need a suit and she needs a gown. You can't get in there with sneakers and jeans. So I remember saying to my wife, look, if the creator of the universe just communicated with us and we want to celebrate, he'll take care of this. So we went over to this Four Seasons Hotel, and there's a nice doorman dressed to the nines with a top hat. And I asked him where the restaurant is, and he sits up on the second floor. And then he says, look, let me take your backpacks from you. I'll give it to you on your way out. But basically, we don't allow people dressed like you with backpacks in our lobby, let alone eat here. So I go upstairs, and the waiters are in tuxedos, the piano player's in a tuxedo, all the guests are in gowns and whatever. And he asks me my name, so I tell him my name. And there's one empty table with a reserve sign on. He takes the reserve sign off, and we eat there. And my wife said she saw our last name on the reserve sign, but I didn't see that. And we're sitting there, and the piano player's playing this song, and I asked the waiter if he knew the song. I don't know why it was in German. I didn't know why I was, curious about it. And they said it's called A Man Like You and Me, which is where the first part of the title of the book comes from. Right. And it's by Michel Jarre. And the lyrics are, it doesn't matter if you're a beggar or a king, we're all slaves to our fate. We all have a fate. We're all equal in this world. And the book is really about the intersection between fate and free will. So we're sitting at this table, and my wife has this little map that they give you at a train station if you want tourist places, important places in Munich. And when you fold it a certain way, there's this Wittelsbach fountain in Munich, and it looks like there's a J there. And she announces to me, we weren't trying to have children then. Our first child is going to be James. The J stands for James. So I'm asking her, well, what's wrong with Joseph or John? Those are good names, okay? So we're running there around 11 o'clock at night to see if there's anything written on this fountain, okay? And it's a beautiful fountain, but it's in a little circle of traffic on a tiny sidewalk. And there's nothing written there, but there's a man standing there, an old man with a southern accent, which I didn't like in those days because we speak very quickly in Brooklyn, okay? And I didn't have time to listen to this scroll. And he looks at me and he says, my name is James. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It's about time you got here. And he turned around and left. So our first son was James, okay? And in that note that she wrote, it had other things that didn't make sense. Paul, Stephen, four founders, St. Bridget of Sweden. So we get on the train. We're now in Vienna the next day. We check into a hotel and we're starving, okay? And there's a law in Vienna that you can't have a building higher than St. Stephen's Cathedral, so you can see it from everywhere. So I look up a restaurant on the plaza there, so I have to ask for directions. And it's again on the second floor. And I open the door. It's like a glass door with a wooden frame. And there's a light on the second floor where supposedly the restaurant is, but it's a dim light. And clearly it's closed. And I turn around and I see a Christmas tree for a few seconds. That disappears. Then an Easter candle for a few seconds, and that disappears. And then I see the face of Jesus. And I'm petrified. I think I'm going to die. And I run to the door to try to get out, and we're locked in. And there's a law in every Western country since 1921. What happened in 1921? There was a fire in the Coconut Grove nightclub in Manhattan, in New York City. And for some reason, the people couldn't get out. They were burned alive. So there's a law in every Western country. If you're closing the place and nobody's there, you can lock it. But once somebody can open the door, you can't lock them in. Okay, and we're locked in. Okay, and then finally, after a couple of minutes more, a lady with blonde hair comes over and opens the door for us easily, and we run out. And I remember saying to my wife, I don't know what, supernatural world we were just in, I need to be real people in a restaurant. The first restaurant we see, I need to see people, whatever it is. Next day I buy this book of saints because now I believe in God, obviously. And I almost passed out. I'm looking at the pages. And on the feast day of St. Bridget of Sweden, which is what she wrote on the note there, okay, there's the picture of the lady who opened the face of the lady who opened the door for us. So this St. Bridget of Sweden may have been born in 1400 and died in 1473. But I swear on October 16, 1982, she was there at the door for us. So these are kind of the things where I believe, because of these kind of things that
happen. That's pretty deep. And I always tell people we got to leave them wanting more. And I think we've come to a great spot to stop for the day. Great stories, Paul, and I hope people get something out of them. And Kimberly, it sounds like yes.
And I hope that
buy the book.
And again,
the link will be in the description.
It's the whole story of it. Again, it's A Man Like You and Me, a supernatural adventure story. And the front of the book is the quote of St. Paul about the definition of love. And the reason for that is you can't have happiness in your life without an appreciation of love from somewhere, a spouse, a child, a friend, a pet, or something. And the back of the book has a picture of a baseball batter. And the reason for that is the baseball batter is like a metaphor in life. We're all sinners, we all fail. So the baseball batter comes to the plate hoping to get a hit. Most of the time he fails, and he's got to wait till his next at bat to try to get a hit again. So the idea is no quit like I did, and keep trying.
Yep, keep trying. Those sounds like pretty good final words for us. Kimberly, do you have any final words for the people, for the nice people?
I think that despite everything, that everybody should just strive to move forward, despite whatever they go through. They need to make sure it's learning experiences, like I said previously, and they need to make sure that these learning experiences don't get repeated. You don't want to repeat the 10th grade, or you don't want to repeat your master's program or doctorate's program. You want to learn and continue to strive to learn. It's a lifetime experience.
A failure's not a failure if you learn something. So, well, that's great. I want to thank you both for being on the show. This has been a great episode. And, to all the people out there, take some risks. Remember to wash your hands and stay tuned for the ending credits. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. I'd like to thank our producer, my beloved mother, Eileen Hatch. I, of course, am your humble host. I'd also like to thank my special guests, Kimberly Cloud and Paul Joel. Support the show if you feel so led over on patreon.com. We're known as Bald Spots Pro. Don't you dare miss YWL Online. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts are offered. Be sure to tune in next time when my special guest will be Kitty Andrews. Kitty helps people simplify, decluttering their brains and environments. It is possible to overcome the overwhelm. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people. If you or someone you know needs support now, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. That is the suicide and crisis lifeline here in the United States.